Hi, I'm Misha,
Hello.
and this Every Life is a Story. And you've just met my friend Heidi Kortman. To me, forever Lady Drew. And I'm just gonna just let her take off and explain to you who she is and how we know one another. So, ladies and gentlemen, Heidi Kortman.
Well, let's see. Way back, if maybe most of you can't remember this, but there was a time when internet was done via dial-up,
In a world
and
far, far away.
it connected through your telephone line. Back when there were such things as landline telephones. Well,
People are looking up on Google now, landline.
Lady Drew, always the educator. Once there were telephones that were connected with wires to your house, and they were stuck into the wall, and they rang. They didn't chirp, they didn't sing, they rang.
Didn't talk to you.
Oh, yeah. And way back in those days, there were internet providers, and one of them, MSN at that point, not Yahoo, not AOL. Oh, never AOL, and never Yahoo. God forbid Yahoo. But MSN was one of the things that I could connect to. And the adventure was, well, what do I do with this thing called the internet? And I saw, look, we have groups. So I started looking for a writer's group. And I came upon the writer's niche. And I had the chutzpah to start critiquing poetry there. And after that, things happened.
I wasn't
Over,
letting you leave. That's for
over
sure.
to you, Mesha.
I was not letting you leave. That is for sure. Because I had no clue what I was doing. I was just this person with fibromyalgia who had to have an outlet and loved writing. And I too had discovered the internet via dial up. And I'm like, okay, I love to write. I'm going to form a writers group. And I'm still a person back then, just like now, I was a person that had vision, not really big on the details, and so having the group was not hard. When it came to what everybody needed, though, that was a little different. You know, I had no problem forming the group and protecting the people and saying, okay, everybody's safe here. If you want critique, fine. If you don't, fine. But when all these people wanted editing and critique, and it was very demanding. And then you came along, and we had a few other people that came along, and you all were fantastic. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you here today, is because I did want to publicly thank you, because that experience with that group, we became, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, we became the largest writers group on MSN for a good long time. We were the largest group, almost 900 people. And that experience, having that group, is where I got the experience I needed to go on and apply that to what I did know, which was fibromyalgia and healthcare and teaching patients and doing workshops and that sort of thing, and to go on and do what I do now. But I couldn't have done that without getting my foot in the door with the writer's niche, and that would not have been successful without you. So thank you very much. I want to publicly thank you for that, because the writer's niche would not have survived without you. One, for all the work you did on the niche, but two, the times I would go into flares, or even when I moved, and you carried the workload for me. So thank you, Lady Drew, because that's who you were then to me, Lady Drew. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I was never aware that the group had gotten that large.
Yes, we did.
But no wonder the trolls showed up.
We were huge. We were huge. We were the largest group, and they were after us for sure. That was the thing back then, is you attacked the large groups. And what Lady Drew and I did, we had the group was protected. If you wanted to come and just write and not worry about what people were going to say, or that's what we made sure happened. Nobody got to criticize you or make you belittle you, put you down, any of that stuff. But if you were there for soft critique, you got soft critique. If you were there for some hardcore, how good am I, then you got that too.
Yeah.
So it was a full service writer group.
I wish I could have been doing that with what I've learned since then, of course.
Right.
But I did what I could with what I knew about at the time. So,
well, the other reason,
which is all anybody can do anytime.
That's all anybody can do, and that is kind of what brings us to the true main reason I want you here, and that is, of course, the show is Every Life is a Story, and my belief is that we all have a story. All of us, actually, our lives are stories, and we have multiple chapters in our lives and multiple stories going on. And if we are brave enough and we'll share our stories with people, we will inspire other people and motivate other people, whether we realize it or not. We sometimes don't realize that what we've gone through, other people can relate to, and it will help other people. And you are absolutely an inspiration, and I don't know that you always see that. You're a modest person.
Almost never.
Almost never.
I tend to downplay myself and consider myself average or invisible or whatever.
And that is
except, of course, when I have tripped over my own feet, then the whole world sees me.
Yeah, well, you are anything but average or invisible. You are Lady Drew, and Lady Drew is anything but average or invisible. As a matter of fact, you have led in your own way an extraordinary life. I know you stayed at home and not been famous. You've done some traveling, but it's not like you've been a globe trotter and traveled the whole world many times or anything. But you have done some things that people will be inspired by, because you've done some things that a lot of people would like to do and may think that they can't. And you are living proof that they most certainly can. And I think that all kind of starts with, girl, you were reading at age 2?
Yeah. My mother was sitting reading the newspaper. I was in her lap. And I suddenly piped up with, "Look, Mom, that says Kroger." It did. And then my mother went into, "Oh boy, we got to teach this kid stuff because she just told me that was Kroger and she's right." So she went into full-on flashcard mode and plastered everything in the house with a flashcard so that I would learn sight reading to know what a word was. And so all the objects got named and all the colors and whatever. And when it got down to action verbs, we'd jump. But I learned all this stuff. And she sent me off to kindergarten. And at 5, I was the sort of obnoxious little kid who would tell her kindergarten teacher that whatever she had just put up on the blackboard was either A, misspelled, or B, needed an apostrophe in the right spot.
You were proofreading at age 5.
Pretty much. And any of my classmates who were trying to read Goldilocks and the Three Bears out of the Little Red Hen upside down, I knew it and did not have the tact at that point not to tell them so.
No, say it didn't.
I was hard to deal with in the classroom, I think. There was a point actually where it was either my kindergarten teacher or my first grade teacher who told my mother at a teacher conference, "Don't let that girl read so much."
Wow. I bet your mother had something to say to that.
She did. She said, "If there's nothing else to read, that girl will read soup cans and a cereal box."
I bet.
Between the ages of 2 and 5, every time we went to the grocery store, she would pick up a different little golden book. Do you remember those?
I do. I had a ton of them too.
Uh-huh. Yep. So I have been a a woman of words and books since a long time.
So you went on to college and became a proofreader.
I did. I got a freelance proofreading job with Baker Bookhouse
Mm-hmm.
for a number of years and was involved in some interesting general market products. They didn't have a fiction department then. They just had other kinds of things. So I was proofreading very thick medical tomes for women's fertility and pregnancy and such things, and um, history of Dutch immigration to America and all kinds of things.
Well, that's a little more interesting.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to back up just a hair. And
Mm-hmm.
in college, I wrote poetry,
Right.
and I had I've had an Ireland Great Britain kick in my life since the first time I saw a parade on Captain Kangaroo with people with bagpipes. I mean, so I've had a Celtic thing going on in my life, even though I'm not Celtic in any way by heritage,
Mm-hmm.
for my whole life. And yeah, I wrote a series of poems in college that were semi epic. And those poems, unbeknownst to me, were entered in a competition, which my favorite college professor of my entire career there told me I won.
Really?
Really. And they got put into a magazine called Christianity and Literature back in 1978, maybe? This is, I mean, ages ago. Ages ago.
Now, see, this is the first I'm hearing about this. You've been holding out on me.
Well, those 7 poems that got into that old magazine became 35. And I think those got posted to Niche at one point.
But I don't think you told us about them being in this magazine, did you?
Ah, well, no. I
No, I
I,
think
I
you
don't
left it
I
out.
don't I don't I don't tend to honk my own horn a lot,
No, you don't.
which is something I guess I'm supposed to learn these days with the way the industry works.
You are. Yes, they expect you to do that.
I would prefer to have my manuscripts honk for me, but
I know. I know.
anyway.
That's how you get them there now.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
that's how it works.
Let's see. Where were we going? Um, College, Baker Bookhouse. Okay. Yeah. After college, there was a point where I wasn't doing a lot of writing until I found the niche.
Mm-hmm.
I had my favorite college professor come over for tea, and he would tell me, "Put down those knitting needles. They're too much like pens. Keep writing. It's important." I didn't necessarily take him up on it, and those were also the years where I was having an increasing number of nieces and nephews.
Right.
Now, for them, I had some things that I had knitted. They were toys, and we were playing with them. And I decided that I would make up my own stories about what these little characters were doing. And so that was what I was typing and putting together in a manuscript, sort of, before I found niche. So if you're looking at this video and you see a very large 3-ring binder on a table behind me, that's what that is. That's the body of that manuscript that I'm retyping word by word because my word processing programs are so old I could no longer open it.
Well, you were going through a rough time whenever you discovered us online, or me online. We really weren't an us when you discovered it. It was kind of me posting to me.
Oh, anyway.
You were kind of going through a rough time, and that's one of the reasons why I think you're such a good person for this program, because you're one of those people who took a rough time and turned it in. You took the variables of that time, the things that you could do something with, and turn those into something good. So go ahead.
Well, this was during my time proofreading for Baker and afterward. My mother had diabetes that was becoming increasingly brittle,
Yes.
and my father was developing symptoms like Parkinson's, but the Parkinson's medications weren't doing that much for him. And I was basically the housekeeper, medication organizer, grocery shopper,
Everything.
everything.
You were everything.
And I was kind of keeping the place ticking along, sort of. Um, and I was feeling trapped
You were very trapped.
because my mother, brilliant though she was, was also a highly critical person.
Very demanding.
So whatever I was doing was never quite good enough.
I remember.
Actually, there was a time in my life when she said to me, "There is no such thing as good enough."
I know.
Um, yeah, this is not something that I deal with well. It didn't encourage me to a lot.
I know.
And when I had a dream, she would say, "Well, how are you going to do that?" And I maybe hadn't planned that far ahead yet.
It was a dream. I know.
Anyway, because I felt trapped, the only way I could get away was to go somewhere in my head. So after I had done the daily chores after dinner and had some time, I went upstairs and I went online and talked with people at the niche and critiqued their stuff if they wanted it. But I was also writing just to be able to get out of where I was. So I wrote an entire novel manuscript,
Yes.
many chapters, many chapters. I
Many.
figured, well, if there's romance in the storyline at all, you kind of have to go from point A to point Z. So it went from hero leaving America to follow his dream to meeting his future bride to all the way to their wedding,
Yes.
which was a manuscript that was roughly twice as long as anybody with no publishing reputation should attempt to offer to an editor or an agent.
It was good.
It was huge.
It was good.
And the people at the niche were so patient. You know.
The story is so great. The characters are so real and they grab you and you just those characters, it is going to be published eventually, is going to be, and those characters are going to be movie characters. That I'm
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you for saying so. It remains to be seen. Timing is weird,
Well, the timing is
but
critical. I know.
we'll see. We'll see.
Yes. So you wrote this story, and of course it's Rory and Shauna and
Multiple other characters. Yes.
yes, multiple characters. You have a whole plethora of characters in your head, and they are just, it is so intricate and it's amazing. It's very good. So in the middle of all of this, you had really pretty much always been home in Michigan near your family, and you did something else extraordinary. You went and bought this huge red suitcase.
Mm-hmm. I have a dear friend who happens to be the same lady who keeps my hair looking fabulous. And she invited me on a bus tour with a company that she'd heard of, just taking little day tour bus tours because she knew how stressed I was. So let's take a day tour, somewhere not far away.
Right.
And the lady who ran the tour handed out the next year's schedule.
Mhm.
And that schedule had on it, on maybe the third or fourth page, 16 days in Great Britain and Ireland.
I know.
And I looked at my friend and I just sighed and said, boy, I wish I could, I wish I could do that, because it looks like they're going some of the places I mentioned in my story.
Yeah.
Now, I was doing that with what forms of internet research I could do at the time. So I knew street names and place names and things like that. And I had worked out obsessively where my character was going, how he was going to get there, and how long it was going to take him to get there.
Yes, you had.
I worked out obsessively on the details, because the last thing I wanted was for anybody, once the thing got published, to give me the, yeah, she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Nobody can ever
So
do that.
I can't handle that.
Right.
So I did a raft of research, and I really wanted to go there and see these places and actually, do a little fact checking to make sure I had it right.
Right.
And shortly after that bus tour where we saw the next year's schedule, my friend contacted me and said, I talked to my husband, and if you can raise the price of your ticket, he's given me permission to take 16 days and go with you. Well, this woman started to plan.
I know.
And my friend and I, we ate a lot of soup. Didn't go out places. We sat at her house and ate a lot of soup. And I poured out all my troubles, and she listened, and we listened to Irish music that we could find somehow, somewhere. And we planned and we planned and we planned. We went to the post office, and oh horrors, had our pictures taken for our passports. Now,
you're not real big on having your picture done.
No,
or being on
not a bit of it. This photograph would have been ideal for picking out a future possible terrorist, because it was, if you yourself have had a bad driver's license photo taken, multiply that by 2 and put it on a passport.
I've had a bad passport picture too.
It's the sort of picture where it's do not mess with a premenopausal woman with an unpublished manuscript sort of picture. I mean, you hijack her flight and you are in serious trouble. That kind of picture.
Don't mess with Lady Drew and her big red suitcase.
No. So I got the passport, I bought the suitcase, and knowing what I knew of Irish climate, I packed stuff that was suitable.
Mm-hmm.
But between the time that we decided to do this and got the passport and got the suitcase, our trip got slowed down by about 6 months. Or, well, actually less. It was supposed to have been in May, but we didn't go until late September, almost October.
Right.
And I had my suitcase packed with suitable stuff, but what I should have done, what I suggest everyone who travels does, which I did not do, was check the forecast for the place the plane is going to land before you get on the plane.
Well, it was your first big trip, and you were excited.
It was my first big trip anywhere.
Yes, this is true.
And so, like I say, if you're going somewhere out of the country, before you get on the plane that's going to take you there, check the forecast for the place you're landing. Because I dressed for Michigan in late September, early October. And I got off the plane in the weather we were having in August. And the result of that bad decision was truly epic, and I'm not going to say anything more about it at all. Just just imagine what could possibly have happened and laugh to yourself because it
It was
was epic.
epic. That word gets used a lot in my life lately. It was epic.
Yes. Well, we landed in London and we had 4 hours to spend before our hotel was going to let us in.
Wow. Okay.
The bus that brought us to the hotel to let us into the rooms and register, we couldn't get into the rooms themselves, but we could abandon our suitcases in a locked place there.
Right.
After that, we had like 4 hours to amuse ourselves.
Okay.
So my friend and I went and we walked in Hyde Park,
Wow.
a very lovely place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I don't
there,
know at all.
we wandered into Hyde Park through the nearest gate, and it was amazing and interesting. People everywhere, all walking their dogs, which I just thought was marvelous. But how oddly that the British don't mow their parks. All the grass was like, would have been knee tall if it was still standing, but it was dried out and it looked like hay that should have been gathered and rolled up and set aside for animal feed because they had been so dry all summer for them, an unusual set of circumstances. So the grass was long and dry and tangled, and I was dressed for Michigan and not in Michigan in August. And we wandered through Hyde Park and we came upon a building. We thought, let's go in there. It might be cooler. It was an art museum showing art that we didn't necessarily appreciate.
Okay.
And for some insane reason, they had the heat turned on.
Wonderful.
So I threw a pound coin in their donation box and we left.
You got out of there. Yeah.
We got out of there and we kept wandering in the park for hours and hours until they could let us into the hotel. And I took along earplugs for my roommate's sake. And we plugged those earplugs in and we overslept and very nearly we missed breakfast.
Oh no.
They had to come and pound on our door and wake us so that we could get on the bus and go on to Salisbury, which was a totally lovely town. It was a Sunday, and I would have loved to stay for Vespers at their cathedral, but we had to go on to Bath. And because I had walked for hours and hours and hours in the park in London, I kind of wished I could disconnect my feet at the ankles.
I bet.
And I ended up actually staying on the bus and napping while my friends all went to the Roman baths and wandered the town.
Wow.
And I was so totally amused because outside the bus window was a sumac bush, which I connect with living in Kent County in Michigan.
Yeah.
Not in Kent County in England.
Yeah, it's like
it's like, wait a minute here. Did I actually leave home?
Yeah. Am I dreaming this? Yeah. Am I dreaming this?
But anyhow, it was a lovely trip. It was one of those beautiful bus tours where if this is Tuesday, that must be Hadrian's Wall. But I got to see a lot of things. And when we crossed into Ireland, the only times it was raining was when we were on the bus.
Awesome.
And there were rainbows. And because of where I live in Michigan with so many trees and bushes and buildings, and I almost never see a rainbow. So it was like, hey, look, a rainbow. And the bus crew was looking at us like, what? Because, of course, they've got vistas over there. And so rainbows look common. But like, we're all pointing out the window, hey, look, it's a rainbow. And they were just laughing at us because we were having such a time of it.
They think I'm nuts
Um,
here too because the rainbows across the strait. It's there almost every day. It
mhm.
rains almost every day, and there's a rainbow across the strait every day, just about. And I take pictures almost every day and act like, oh my God, there's a rainbow.
Mhm.
And I
Yep.
don't know if I'm ever going to get used to it. I mean, it's like
It
every
don't.
rainbow.
They're wonderful.
I know, every
Anyway,
rainbow.
let's see. We're in Ireland and we're cruising the countryside, and we get to stop for 15 minutes at a time in some of the places I've written into my story.
Mm-hmm.
So I do in fact see that a pub that I have mentioned is painted in the most astonishing shade of salmon pink.
Oh,
Not that I got to go into the pub, but I saw it.
right.
So
Is this where you had your
that
pint?
no, I was having my pints elsewhere.
Okay. All right.
Um, I had several pints. Let's face it, with my tour group, there was one dear gentleman who decided he was going to have a pint as often as possible,
Only one
and
gentleman?
so he probably had a pint for breakfast when he could get away with it. Um, anyhow,
Gentleman after my own heart.
yeah, we went all manner of places. Many of them I wish I could have stayed.
Sure.
The last place we were was Liverpool. This was the last stop before coming home.
Yeah.
It was World Cup soccer weekend in Liverpool.
Okay.
And unlike many of the other places, our hotel room was micro small. You could just barely walk between the bed and the dresser.
Wow.
It was really, really tiny and really, really loud. And at our last supper in Liverpool, somebody bought me a pint. And I don't know who that was because when the pint got set between me and the man who wanted Guinness at every opportunity, I assumed that that pint was his.
Uh-huh.
If I had had my wits about me, which I didn't because I was thinking, I don't want to go home,
Right.
I would have asked the waitress to send the man over who brought me the pint and figured out why he bought me the pint because this never happens to me ever.
Yes.
I'd have I'd have stayed because he bought me the pint,
Mm-hmm.
but since I didn't know who to talk to or thank or whatever,
Right.
I went home.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I got home, it was as though I never left.
Mm-hmm.
I had an absolutely crushing greeting when I got home, which I don't know if I want to put out to the world, but it was crushing and it just instantly wiped out all the pleasure of the trip. Wham.
Yeah.
Anyway, um,
But you went.
I went
You
and it
went.
was wonderful.
You went.
And
And you did some more traveling too.
well, yeah, let's see. After a while and a whole bunch of editing in which I took my hero leaving home novel to his wedding length story and cut it roughly in half and then severely self edited that, I did another very large, very scary thing to me. I booked my own flight to my very first writers' conference.
Yes.
And I
And
have
amazing
not
thing
had
happened.
I have not had a very good track record at job interviews.
Yeah.
So I was terrified and thinking of speaking to editors and agents just like so I ended up to try to calm my nerves. I wrote a story, a scene where I sent my novel hero to go talk to the agent. and had him say, "Get me out of this lady's head. She's messing with my life."
Turn me loose.
Things are happening to me that I did not plan. Get me out of her mind, please. She's demanding that I pay her rent. Um, Now, I still don't have an agent,
Right.
but if I ever get one, I might just show them that document. Maybe.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know whether that will be a good thing and they will laugh or they will think that I am completely crazy. But
I see a workshop in your future someday where you're teaching young authors and you show it to them. That's what I see. That's what I see. So
well,
you've gone on to these writers' conferences and you showed your manuscript and you actually got asked to send it in by
not it so much as proposals,
proposals, right?
which are shorter documents that
Right.
explain who you are, why you have the guts to have written this story, and other things about it, plus maybe 3 chapters.
Right.
And so that was like hugely cool at the time because I already understood that there were authors who would go to these places for years and never get such a reaction.
Yes. And you got it your first time. Your first time.
I got it my first time.
Because you're so compelling and the characters are so compelling and you just think that you weren't going to present well.
Well, I suppose I do have an internal critic who is just like going overdrive.
Well, you were programmed to think about yourself that way, but you're writing your life differently. You know better than that.
Trying anyway.
Yes, you are. So, we still don't have that one published, but you worked with a group and you've gotten it cut down to where it's a manageable size. Yes.
Yes. It's now the size where someone with no literary reputation can go and present it to people.
But you are published
in some short stories and some poetry and other things that have appeared other places. I'm just not published in a novel-like thing.
Right. And what you have coming out now are 4 short stories in one anthology. So you got the beginning, you got the end, and not one spot in the middle, but 2 spots in the middle. And that is like, they should have just given you the whole thing and just called it the Lady Drew anthology.
I didn't have that much material. If I had, I might have offered it all.
If they would have told you that they needed it and given you just a little bit of time.
Well, they were telling me they needed more stories, and I went scrounging in the back of my computer and found some and said, well, what about this one? Oh, great, thank you.
I'm sure, yeah.
I mean, after a point, it becomes a little bit embarrassing to be giving them every single short story you own. I didn't quite, but almost.
Tell us about the anthology. Tell us about it and about your stories that are in it.
Okay. The anthology is called Heartland Treasures, and it is currently up on Amazon in Kindle and paperback format.
Okay.
If you go looking for it, if there are other things with the same title, this is this one that has a wheat field and 2 hot air balloons, and the title is written in yellow.
Okay. And it's also on the front of your website too, HeidiKortman.com, which is the blog. It's there too. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And there are links in that, so you can just click there depending on where you go, or straight to Amazon and look. Let's see. The first story in the anthology actually happened one of the stories in the middle of the anthology happened because someone at Niche put up a challenge to write a short story with 3 characters, a pickup truck, and a road trip.
I know. I can't believe a story from way back then made it into this anthology.
And I wrote something called Bringing Granny Home,
I remember. Mm-hmm.
which involved a mother, a son, the mother's mother in law, and a potted cactus.
Yes.
So that is in the anthology in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
The other story in the middle is called Not Even Solomon, and it's about a lady who needs a knee replacement and has had it, but is not yet given the go ahead to do the gardening she desperately wants to do, and what her friend does about her impatience.
Okay.
Um, Anybody who knows me and knows where I used to live will know that I have slightly described the house I used to live in for that story, and it's a bit of a reminiscence of my schnauzer.
Okay.
Um, the other two stories, I have to remember now how and why I started
Which one's in
cold
the
egg. Um, okay, shortly after the very first writers' conference I went to, I submitted Rory to a very small publisher
Mm-hmm.
that was also producing a very small magazine. Well, the editor who bought the first short story I sold, which is the first one in this anthology, it's been reprinted now. It's called Hot Coffee, Cold Eggs, Warm Heart.
I love it. I
The
really love it.
and that was sold to a very small magazine called Harpstring, put out by the small publisher Written World Communications. Um, I resubmitted it to this second anthology, but the editor who bought it from me tried to bring my novel to Written World Communications for possible publication. However, at that point, it was the way too long hero leaves America to the wedding, and it needed too much editing for them to put it out on their current schedule. In the intervening years, that small publisher closed its doors for a while. And I decided I would write a sequel to Hot Coffee, Cold Eggs, which Hot Coffee, Cold Eggs, Warm Heart is set in a diner, and the main character is the diner owner. In the process of the story, you meet all of his regulars who come in every day. But there's one person who hasn't shown up,
Right.
and he is more reliable to show up every day than any of the others. And the diner owner gets nervous and goes to find out why.
So it's a mystery, or at least in part.
A bit of a mystery.
Okay.
And in the intervening years, I decided I would write a sequel to this, explaining what happened to the secondary character and his life since that day.
Mm-hmm.
And that story is now at the end of the anthology, and it's called Access, Hash Browns, and Cherry Pie.
All right.
So the dear people who set up this anthology have given me the first story in the book and the last story in the book, which is just amazing to me because they didn't have to.
Well, you should not be amazed. You're an excellent writer. Your characters are always gripping. Your writing is amazing. They also gave you 2 stories in the middle. That should tell you something. I mean, you
Yep.
know, so that's why you're here, is because for anyone out there who thinks, I want to write, but I can't, try. At least try. Maybe you're not a Lady Drew. Maybe you weren't reading it too and have her vocabulary and her abilities. Maybe you weren't proofreading the kindergarten teacher and doing it well. But you can certainly try, because as Lady Drew has pointed out, you can take difficult times in your life, and you can take the variables and you can write your own story, and you've certainly done that. And now you don't have Rory and Shauna published yet, but 4 stories in one anthology. That's amazing. Whenever you told me how many they were putting in, I'm like, okay, I've been wanting to ask her to do this, but I got brave enough to, because I know your aversion to being in front of the camera. I know you like to take the pictures, not be in front. And whenever I sent to you and said, okay, I've been wanting to ask you this, but now's the time. Will you please do Every Life is a Story? And you came back at me with, well, this technical reason and that technical reason. And finally, after some back and forth, well, I got my hair done. How? I'm like, yes, she's going to do it. Because I do think that your story is an inspiration. So do you have anything you'd like to close with? Because we are, after all, about inspiring other people and telling them that it's never too late to make a good
let's say this. Toward the end of my rough time, I was, dealing with things and feeling very trapped. And I finally said to my mother, "What did you thank God for today?" And although she never did answer me, I am determined to thank God for something every day, because I do not choose to become as critical as she was. I do not want to be that kind of person. So I may only have a kitchen because it comes with the apartment, but even when it's chock full of dirty pans like it was last night, I can backtrack far enough, keep saying thank you for things, and get out of a grump. So try it.
That's right. No matter where we're at in the day, no matter what's caused it, you all know where I'm going with this. Whatever's happened, we can choose at that moment to stop and reset our day and make our stories what we want them to be. We write our own stories. So Lady Drew, my friend Heidi Drew Kortman, has been a living example of that. So thank you for being on with us. And you all, I mean that truly. I'm not always perfect at it, but I try to live my life that way too. No matter what's going on, no matter how crappy the day may be going, I try to stop, get my head in the right place, reset it, and start over. Whatever the variables are, I try to turn them, and remember that it's my life, my story. I choose. As long as I'm still breathing, I'm not out of ink. And I'm not through writing yet, folks, and you all aren't either. So until next time, see you. Bye.